All right, let's stay with the story. Take you live to Washington, D.C. now and to FSN correspondent Caroline Malone. It's great to talk to you, Caroline. Thanks very much indeed for coming on. And he did say it in an interview with Fox News, didn't he, Trump, during his campaign, that he would be a dictator from day one.
He did say that, and what we've seen is that he is taking action very quickly, very early on in this new presidency. So as you heard, they're signing a number of executive orders that will have potentially dramatic impacts for both people in the United States and around the world. Maybe one of the strongest impacts will be felt at the borders. So really make it incredibly difficult, if not impossible, for many people to claim any form of asylum, both at the border with Mexico, which is now shut down to new asylum applications, but also online. There used to be an app, a phone app that people could use from other countries to pre-plan and apply for asylum in the United States before they actually reach the border. That was under the Biden administration. That is now not functioning as well. There's also question marks about what impact these new rules under Trump will have for people currently in the United States. You know, we are hearing some suggestion there could be raids to try and get people essentially that don't have the right paperwork, potentially deport people in large numbers. We'll have to see if that in fact does happen. There are other question marks about what's known as birther status, essentially people who are the children of immigrants that don't have the right paperwork, who are born in the United States, and what sort of status they have going forward. That is currently something that is protected under the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, though. So we'll have to wait and see, if there ends up being potentially some kind of legal battle regarding a number of people, millions potentially, who could be impacted by these new executive orders from Trump. The others that are, clearly impactful are related to the climate change. He's withdrawn from the Paris Agreement. That was something that we expected. But some of the rules that he's also lifting within the United States could mean it's much easier for gas-guzzling cars, for instance, to be on the road. He's basically stopping any protections to reduce pollution in a lot of cars here, lifting levies on electric vehicles, which, of course, part of the push for that under the Biden administration and earlier was to reduce pollution by creating cleaner vehicles. So really making it easier also to drill again for oil and gas, including expanding the area included to parts of Alaska, where there's a lot of wilderness that previously had been protected for environmental reasons. Now that area is back open up again to drilling for oil and gas.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's stay with the climate change issue for a moment, Caroline. You've talked about rolling back restrictions on drilling in Alaska, undoing a pause on gas exports. It also means that this new declaration allows Trump's administration to fast-track permits for new fossil fuel infrastructure. And this sort of describes what the kind of coverage around Trump's administration in terms of climate change and in terms of these kinds of fossil fuel declarations. People have described it as a wrecking ball for climate change, his administration.
Well, yes, absolutely. I've heard that analysis as well. And certainly it will be very interesting to see how quickly companies pick it up and how quickly they decide to start drilling and start, using oil and gas facilities that maybe would have shut down in the past due to less demand for that type of energy resource. And also new companies in new areas, as you point out, Alaska and also other parts of the country where there's still an opportunity, including for things such as fracking in Pennsylvania. That's a state where there's been a lot of focus of discussion about whether fracking is good or not. Another type of energy that has come into focus in recent months and years is using nuclear-powered energy, essentially. That is something that has already come back online or in the process of, including in states such as Pennsylvania, to help power this new AI revolution that we are seeing around the world. Companies like Microsoft are behind reopening some of the nuclear power stations that had closed under previous administrations already, even at the end of last year. So I think we could potentially see a whole raft of changes when it comes to drilling, but also maybe looking at other alternative sources. And that is contentious, but there are some people that do support that clearly in the United States. I spoke to some people outside of the Capitol Arena on Monday who were there to support Trump. And a few of them pointed to these energy concerns and how they are happy that Donald Trump is now allowing there to be more drilling, allowing there to be more oil and gas being used for energy resources, because of the cost of gas in the United States. One person in particular from Hawaii talking about gas being $5 a gallon, hoping that with these new rules in place, actually it'll bring the cost down and that will have a knock-on impact onto other goods as well. So, clearly it's a multi-layered issue here. But yes, absolutely, there's going to be some impact, not just for the individual person in the United States, but on climate change as a whole.
And talking about decisions the new president has made that has a wider impact, the decision to leave the WHO, Trump saying that the World Health Organization has ripped off the US for years and that's not going to happen anymore. So this decision comes into effect in 12 months' time, Caroline. And very importantly, it also means all US financial contributions to the WHO will stop. Devastating for a whole range of programs, perhaps more so for the African continent, because the US is the biggest funder of the WHO.
Absolutely. That will have a huge impact, as you say there, on the finances for the World Health Organization going forward. And it's something that we actually saw in the last Trump administration as well. Him withdrawing the United States from many different organizations that do help people globally. And as a knock-on impact, also reducing the amount of support the US gives to those agencies. This dates back really to his beef over the COVID-19 pandemic, his concerns over, particularly in the United States, some of the mandates that were put in place. We had at the time the head of the National Health Institute, Anthony Fauci, who, encouraged and put in vaccine mandates for many federal agencies and the wider population, also encouraged mask wearing. And that's something that a lot of Republicans, particularly more extreme, more conservative, didn't like to have to be forced to do. They saw that as being an encroachment on their freedom of rights. And so there has been this sort of growing trend, really, on the far right side of the United States of people that are against enforcement of those type of health laws. And as a result, we're also seeing now Trump at the highest level taking this action to push back against the type of support the US gives to organizations like the World Health Organization. I think one other area that's important to mention is the pardons he has given to a lot of people in the United States over their actions on January 6th, 2021. That was the Capitol riots. He has given clemency or pardons, full pardons in a lot of cases, to about 1,500 people involved in the Capitol attacks. Only about 14 people he hasn't given entire pardons to, but he has given clemency to reduce their sentences. Those 14 were among the most violent on the day of January 6th, when his supporters went to the Capitol and stormed in and were looking for lawmakers to try and stop the right process of democracy, ultimately. And I think in a sort of bigger trend, that is something that is very concerning to people here. If he's willing to give that level of clemency to people who essentially are willing to fight for him, use violence in his name, then it does raise a lot of question marks about what could happen going forward.
What kind of message is the president sending? Caroline, thanks very much indeed for joining us this afternoon. We didn't get to those 78 executive orders, Biden-era executive orders to be rescinded, but we'll continue to track this story for us. Caroline Malone is an FSN correspondent live to us from Washington, D.C.